Hi, my name is Dan. I'm 31 years old and from Portland, Maine. I am here to tell you a little bit about my own story and hope that it will help you out in your own journey. I also want to preface this by saying that this is the second edition of my video. The first one I asked to be pulled because I simply wasn't brave enough to have my story online, but through very encouraging friends, I realized that there's no better time than the present to be brave and to make sure that our stories are heard and that we stand up for each other. My own story is kind of unique. I grew up in a very loving family, very supportive brothers and sisters and parents. But regardless of how my home life was, my school life was so horrible that I still felt utterly alone and that I had nobody to turn to, which is kind of ironic. I wasn't immune from bullying at all. In fact, I feel like bullying was all I remember of my school experience. I remember at one point going to the guidance counselor in junior high because I was having nightmares, killing myself in front of the school, in front of an assembly, things like that. And just kind of coming to her and crying, just saying, I can't take the bullying anymore, I want to die. And I just realized that, I'm 13, 14 years old at the time, and just how young that seems to me now as a 31-year-old to think in junior high at 13 I wanted to just give up. And how ridiculous that sounds now as an adult. I would like to say that maybe, or would hope to say that things got better in high school. Unfortunately, things just kind of escalated and continued to get worse. Just your standard bullying. However, one situation does stand out and kind of makes my story unique, which is my history class junior year of high school. There were three particular bullies who felt like it was their duty to make sure that I was less of a person than they were. And it just started off with just simple words and gestures and things like that. And it just kind of kept escalating further and further. The teacher never wound up saying anything to them to say that your behavior is not acceptable. So I feel like that gave the students permission to feel like they were entitled to belittle me. And very few students would even say anything either to kind of stand up for me, either. The bullying in that class did escalate to a point where at one point one of the three students did stand up in class. He pulled me out of my desk and he did throw me down on one of my desks and mock raped me in front of the class, humiliating me. Needless to say, I did just walk out of school that day. I couldn't take it. And again, just throughout the whole course of this, the teacher never really doing anything to support me, the administration not really doing a whole lot to support me. Finally, I did go to the principal, and they did need witnesses in order to kind of go forward with the story. Finally, I did have some students or classmates who were willing to kind of stand up for me. And sorry, I get like a little choked up every time I say it. I'm 31 years old and I'm still choked up by my own story. So I did have friends who were willing to stand up for me, but and the students were kind of punished at one point. But what I guess really upsets me the most was the type of punishment that the students received, and shows kind of how much more education needs to be done in schools to show that this is serious, and students do need to be shown that there are repercussions for their actions. One student was kicked out for a week of school. He did come to me crying that day, begging me to not let it go through, but I stood my ground, feeling that he needed to deal with what he, or face what he did. The second student was kicked out for 4 days, but was allowed to return back to school on Friday so that he could attend the state wrestling match that Saturday. He needed to be in school that day. For me personally, I felt like that was more of a reward than a punishment. Ironically, 13 years later, he found me on Facebook and gave me the longest apology that I've ever received. Getting choked up about it, sorry. And then the third student, who kind of was the one that did the most of the violence, he had had so many strikes against his own record that one more strike would get him expelled from school for good. The school felt that this didn't count or wasn't severe enough to matter. So they decided to put him in in-school suspension instead. Again, it just hardly seems like a punishment. A few years after high school, I did learn that he committed suicide himself. I don't believe that he was gay, but it also goes to show that you don't really know the demons of your bullies either. They're facing things in their own lives, so sometimes we need compassion for them as well, or understanding. After high school, things really just got great. I went to college, became really involved in student government, became student government president by senior year of college, and had tons of friends. It was a completely different experience that I never would have had. I keep getting choked up, I'm sorry. We're probably going to wind up redoing this again. So, just experiences that I never would have had if I had chosen to end things when I could have. And this is kind of the things that I just keep going back to, which is that looking back as an adult and how they treated me back then, my perception is so different to think that, why did it ever matter? Why did it ever bother me? Why did I ever think that they were worth losing my life over? Forfeiting my dreams, my hopes, my ambitions, what I wanted to be. They're not worth giving up your future for. They'll never ever be worth it. And you have to realize that someday things will get better. You'll have a family of your own, however you create that. You'll have a community of people who love you. I'm currently involved in community theater, and I have a huge family that just, have surrounded me. And how much of this I would have missed if I didn't see it through. Didn't have the courage to make it through the present and have hope for the future. So I am here to say that it does get better. I'm kind of living proof of that, and just hang in there, have courage for the present moment, and hang on to hope. You could just